So what we had started kind of chatting about yesterday got me thinking about a few things, and some of what we were talking about was just a little bit about. We were talking about data. We were talking about agentic enterprise. What does it mean to be? What does it mean to be agentic? Right? There's plenty of people don't even understand what that term means, or what it means to be agentic enterprise ready, and all that stuff. But the other thing that the thing that kind of really made me start thinking a lot more last night after we hung up was we used to love doing our boot camps, and for the last year, we haven't done them. We've done a few, and we've done some for private organizations and stuff like that because the landscape is changing. The certifications are changing, and what it means to be a platform administrator is changing, and what it means to be Pardot or account engagement certified is changing, and another certification is what you said. I think you told me it's like actually going away,
They're
and
retiring it
yeah,
at the beginning.
retiring it. So. But it got me thinking about boot camps in general and just the approach to them, because I still think that, and the reason that I wanted to talk to you about it here, because I think that this is a really interesting topic for a lot of people, right? When we talk about, well, do people still want those in-person learning experiences, or in person as we get with a Zoom conference like that? But the reason that I think that our boot camps were so successful was because they weren't overly pre-prepared. We had a workbook, which was our guide, and that's what our everybody who participated got that as well. And we had a big plan for how we were going to move through the modules and things, but we allowed the participants to help give back to us what was going to be important to them, and where they're stubbing their toes. So it was truly a learning environment, right? And what we found was that they got a lot out of that, but everybody that was there got a lot out of that. Just the idea that they could, rather than just going and doing a CBT, that's all, click this button, read it, watch a little video and click a button. It's more interactive than that, right? And same thing with Trailhead. I love Trailhead. I love going through the exercises on Trailhead, but sometimes I just want to sit in a room with somebody and be taught how to do this thing and be able to interact and give feedback. And it got me thinking about the agentic piece of this. Maybe it doesn't fit into a certification box anymore when we're talking about how we approach these boot camps. And yeah, maybe this is going to be put out in the ether, and that's fine, because I think it's still just a segment. There's still plenty of people who learn better going to Trailhead, or who learn better going through a CBT, or reading material out of an implementation guide or a guide like that. But I think there's always going to be a good segment of the population that just prefer to get in a room with somebody and be taught, and have that interactive human experience. And I think that we did that really well. And I think that there is an opportunity for us to talk in a classroom environment with people who are on this same journey, figuring out what it means to be agentic in the first place, what it means to be ready for that agentic enterprise, and working with agents in your enterprise. And we came off of that because we were talking about data and data cleanliness and stuff. And I know it's a bit of a path to get there back to boot camp, but I think you get where I'm going. It's that's just it's a way people learn sometimes. And
Well,
I wonder, maybe that is still something that we can help people with, and provide a classroom experience that helps
well,
them get
yeah,
that.
I love that, and I think the biggest thing about the classroom experience and what we did with our boot camps, like you said, we we had a blueprint, right? We had a progression that we wanted to get through, features of the platform, how they work, a lot of those types of things that would be on those certifications, like understanding where to find certain things in different menus, and understanding what certain parts of the platform would do and not do, those types of certification preparation um, discussions.
Hmm.
But yes, what the boot camp did and where it added the most value was you get a group of people in a room, and the folks that were participating were folks that were actively working inside of an environment. So I'm Brandon. I'm responsible for driving demos for Solana Speed Shop. I want more people checking out these really cool bass guitars, and I have to figure out how to do it with this platform. Right. So I come to this class saying, all right, I've got this instance and this is going on and I can't figure out how to do this thing. Well, our boot camps weren't these pre recorded you know, courses that you would never find, you wouldn't get the answer to that. And what would happen is in answering the question for Brandon trying to solve a problem, then Liz, who is, doing something in manufacturing is like, oh, that's similar to a problem that I'm having. And so I think the biggest value, the boot camps did create a lot of value, but one of the huge things that I loved in the way that we did those was it became this place to come together and really have these discussions. So beyond just learning about how the platform works, we were teaching folks about objects and fields and relational databases and formulas and journey building, all of those good things. But it was when we got to those details, those Q&A questions of, I've been trying to do this thing and it's not working. Why? Right? Because now we're learning. Now we're trailblazing, right? We're not going down this specific manu- um, um, manufactured, manicured trail to say, all right, your goal is to go through here and we're all going to have the same outcome here. There's value in that, right? There's value in those trails.
Yeah, the repetition, the
The
practice moving through
repetition
the
and
platform, of course.
okay, I'm starting here and we're all going to get to this destination. But or even myself, I've always found the gap is okay, I can go through all of these agent force trails, I can go through all this agentic stuff. It's going to give me this very procured, manufactured path that I'm going to go down. And at the end, I'm going to have a coastal cloud agent that can tell me what room I'm in and recommend yoga class in the morning, right?
Mhm.
Myself and everyone else who's gone through the trail has the exact same solution. But it doesn't take you down what I've always called real trailblazing of, all right, now let's apply this to Solana Speed Shop. Let's apply this to a guitar vendor that needs to have an agent that's going to help Brandon understand the difference between these different guitars and help me maybe place a guitar order and add some value there. And I think a lot of folks come out of these really procured experiences having a better understanding about how to build a certain type of agent, but there still remains a huge gap in being able to operationalize it. Even going to a lot of the agent force workshops, those are great as well because you go into a room with a bunch of people and you're in there for a day or a half day, right? Depending on the workshop. And in the morning, you're going to learn how agent force works and you're all going to build an agent together, right? You're
Mhm.
building the same agent. You can ask questions. They've got super knowledgeable people. I love folks who I work with that, so especially the folks who put on those workshops at Salesforce. Similarly, big room, tons of people, aggressive agenda to get through. So there isn't as much of an opportunity to stop and wait and say, okay, I need to work with someone to help me digest how I apply this back to my specific thing. Right? That's a world that doesn't exist in these guided learning sessions.
Right.
So a boot camp where you can come in, ask hard questions, and even as instructors, we might be sitting in there having to process, having to think through in real time because we don't have the script. We're not going off of the script. We're not going off of that procured manufactured journey. And we're like, let's talk about that. And then when you get the dialogue going, and it's always best when there's another student there that says, oh, well, you know what? I had something similar and it was like this. And then they're able to chime in. That's creating a real learning environment.
Mhm.
So I love that. And yeah, I think that is a great way to learn still, especially as there's all of these new things to learn. What are the gaps that other people are having agentic errors with? Building something agentically is tough because even the platform itself isn't going to necessarily know all the specifics for your business. And every Salesforce org that we've worked with is so custom tailored to that business's specific thing, even if they're not having a bunch of custom objects and flows and automations incorporated. There's always a sales process. There's always specifics, information that company A needs, that company B doesn't really need so much. There's unique processes, right? And so every agent that's going to be built across every Salesforce enterprise is going to have to be unique. So, as an admin of one of those organizations, or a marketing specialist, or a sales specialist, or a service specialist, or a commerce specialist, it's going to be important to be able to take that knowledge that you have, that you bring with the last 10 years of understanding how these systems work, and bridge that with um, agentic capabilities, and be able to do enough, whether it's testing, whether it's establishing guardrails early on, whether it's establishing permissions early on. It's really hard work that you're not going to be able to knock out in an afternoon.
Well,
Uh,
gosh, I think that's yeah. Well, that's one of those statements that's like, well, that should be obvious. It should be obvious that you're not going to get to a position where you are taking advantage of an agent in a day. Well, that brings us kind of back to what we were talking about before, and we have talked about this before, but I think it's important to in the way that it's reiterated, because I still don't think that enough people are hearing it. And that the again, if you want your agents to work the way that you expect, if you want your AI tools in general to work the way that you expect, then you'd better do your groundwork first, right? You better lay the foundation for that stuff before you start dogpiling on it. And what we keep seeing is folks who are being extraordinarily pressured by leadership to get AI functionality going, like we've talked about, agentic functionality going, and still struggling with the idea that you don't just flip a few switches and AI starts doing stuff. And well, there certainly are occasions where you have an opportunity to kind of flip a few switches and get a few things going. What's it looking at? The underlying data, right? So it's if you flip some switches on and start asking that agent to start looking at your data, what's going to happen if your data is in bad shape?
and I'm seeing that all the time,
Hmm.
right? We work with someone who's using, we'll use an example, marketing cloud account engagement. They flip on the engagement feature, or the Einstein features, which are great, right? I think they're awesome because they're new. It provides these new data sets.
I
It gives
agree.
you some
Yeah.
like clean numbers between 1 and 100. A lot of that stuff I love. And then we have like a 6-month check in with the customer. And what we like to do on these check ins is, how is sales, um, perceiving these, or are you able to use these numbers? And that the bad data impacts an Einstein score. And so, oh, you know what? Well, yeah, this account actually isn't, shouldn't be scored that high because of these 5 reasons, right? So we even have AI going in there, or these machine learning Einstein tools going in there, looking at all the data that's inside of the system and saying, well, hey, here's an engaged person at an account that has some good stuff going on with it. And then, sales will still say, well, that's not SQL because of these 5 conditions, right? And that's
Mhm.
that human gap. Someone in sales knows, well, geez, yeah, I've been trying to sell Solana Speed Shop guitars to Salesforce San Francisco executive office for the last 5 months. Yeah, they read the emails, but here's where they're really at. That's why that score is no good. And that's the conversation that I've continued having even this week, like this morning, this literally 3 back-to-back calls, all the exact same problem, that MQL to SQL. And I'm seeing
Mhm.
a lot of companies looking at that and saying, okay, we need to reset this entire thing.
Yeah.
And whether they're looking to do that to prepare for something agentically down the road, it will lead to that. But we can't even have that agentic conversation, because the conversation right now is, we just need this to work. I need sales trusting leads from marketing, right? And as a marketing, I need clean insights from sales so I can create segments and I can add folks to the right nurture campaign so we can provide a good customer experience. There's still humans that have to flush this stuff out. So humans are still flushing it out. Humans that are having the conversations, and they know these accounts because they've had relationships with them for the last X amount of time, or they
Mhm.
know other businesses in that market. All these things that your agents aren't going to be trained on, right? But it's your guy or your gal who's been in Seattle working with all these, going to all these events, and going, oh yeah, I've actually met Ken before. Ken, he's not a buyer. He's not the person I'm talking about. Right. If an agent doesn't have those insights, an agent is going to give you some information saying, oh, well, here's Ken. He's still active, right? He's not opted out. Reach out to him. And then it's a dead end. And in some cases it causes more problems than what you need. And so until we figure out how to really get that human information into a system, particularly in the world of agentic CRM, we can't even have that conversation. Now, there is a use case that has been very, very successful agentically. It's a financial services a client of ours, and the financial service clients of ours, they do commercial loans, right, to specific types of businesses. What we've been able to roll out for them is a very specific agent that, in a scenario where an application is started, they've got the information they need about the person, right? They're able to feed just very little details to the agent because the agent doesn't need much, right? And the agent is able to go out agentically and initiate conversations with text messaging, phone calls, and emails saying, hey, Ken, I'm reaching out for Salon and Speed Shop. Your application's 75% complete, right? Your application is ready. We just need to have one last phone call to finalize your application, right? And the rule that we have in there is if that application gets stale, hey, Ken, just letting you know we're getting ready to close out your application. Now, that is something that traditionally we could do with automation, but to watch this agent do the work has been really, really cool because the agent is able to sound more human than automation, right?
Mhm.
If we were doing the exact same thing using automation, it would be the exact same message. This is your application process, and you are here, and you are here, and you are here, and we need X. Call us back at this number, go to some no reply or whatever. But releasing an agent in that one very specific phase in the buyer's journey has helped a lot. I think like the number that the client has shared with me is like 67 of those of those deals that
Brandon might have kids.
yeah uh, um, before having those deals
Mhm.
would have just dropped off, or
Mhm.
sales would have just moved on to the next thing and it would have been ignored. But having that agent reach out and like, it's very personal, right? It's like a, hey Ken, like Salon Speed Shop, you're working with this lender. Look, we've got everything ready to go. We just need to finish it. Like let's go. Like,
Mhm.
and because it sounds personal, like highly, highly personal, right? Because the emails are highly, highly personal, because the agent has the information it needs and it's fulfilling this very specific gap, it's working really, 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 really well. But if we were going to take that same agent and, let's say, open it up to do five other things, you're going to come into the risk of
Well, you
hallucination.
you said the whole key to the whole thing right here. You said it doesn't need much, but what it needs has to be right, or it's not
Right.
going to be able to do that thing, right? So it's a very specific agent. It does this very specific thing. And like you said, because we can focus it, we can guarantee that it's going to get the right information to do that thing. But you're right. As soon as you open up that, Pandora's box, how do you start controlling things, right? Well, that's when you've really got to sit down and make sure that you're, again, I mean, it's going to come right back to the quality of your underlying data. Do you have the right information to serve the agent, so that it can do its thing? And like you
And even
said, boy, the
beyond
human
that,
interaction thing, Brandon, that's a big one, right? Because we were talking a little bit last week, and we talk a lot about, if you want to make this better, make it easier for your team to get the data in the first place, right? And you seem to kind of keep coming back around to that same idea. Boy, if the data's got to go in, it's got to go in. It's got to be easy for these folks to be able to do.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and then agentically, just to touch one more on
Mhm.
steps towards building an agentic enterprise. The true agentic enterprise is many, 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 many agents working together. They have to be tightly scoped. They have to be extremely specific in their niche. That is where I am seeing the most success right now, tenfold. And by that, I mean even beyond like it's a marketing agent, right? But
Mhm.
this is a marketing agent for a specific thing, for a specific buyer in a specific phase of their buyer's journey. And when you get that granular with a specific agent, it is able to deliver very, very strong, personalized, compelling messages. We've got our reply intelligence agents that we use that we're now able to do some of that conversational stuff. And what I love about those is their ability to take some of the colder folks who have maybe they've cooled down, maybe their priorities have changed, maybe they're no longer responsible for something, no longer with company, and just say, yeah, no big deal, Ken, I'll opt you out. And I love how we have it. Um, Sending that response when someone says no longer interested, I don't need help with account engagement anymore, right? That's what it's geared out a lot of. Oh, we're no longer using account engagement. Hey, no worries, I've updated our system. That's great, right? But
Mhm.
again, it's there for a super specific purpose, right? It is like one employee for a role that, organizationally, you've been here with me for a long time. We've always tried to fill that role. It's something that is challenging for folks because it's not high revenue, high revenue opportunities, right? Like colder people or folks that are cooling down.
Mhm.
But for us as a business, being able to just have that data clean because we have that one agent going through and kind of closing the loop for us.
Yeah.
Hey, you're no longer interested? No worry, I'll opt you out. Now we know that person's opted out. Versus in the past, we've had this issue, like in the boot camp issue, where we've had everyone who we implemented and folks in the company who like signed up to go to one of our free webinars, we were teaching a thing, or joined a boot camp or whatever, and we would market to them in a tool that was very much one way. And it wasn't until we went back, like, oh shoot, like that person did leave the company like a few years ago, but we never got the bounce. So, when we go to reach out to try to identify a new opportunity for our team, it was like dead end after dead end after dead end, right? There was no way of moving towards agentic if we don't have like one specific, you would call that maybe a marketing scrubber agent, right? And that marketing scrubber agent's job is to go through everyone who maybe their last activity was greater than 1 year ago, their last opportunity was closed greater than 1 year ago, maybe they were a closed loss or something. Things that when you try to assign that kind of work to a salesperson, they're not going to say,
Yeah, not so fun. So
hey,
you're
Ken,
talking
go
about
back
using
to
an
all the people
agent to make that outbound
who told
call
you
then,
no.
right? You're
What's
you're
that?
talking about using an agent to make that outbound call. So we're not talking about an email or an SMS message. We're talking about an agent making a phone call for you to
Well,
update that info.
we've got them doing voice. They
Yep.
can do SMS. They can do email. So it's any of the channels,
Mhm.
right? I think
Do you
in
see
our
anyone that's getting like more success? Like, what kind of success have you seen from the live agents on the outbound calling? I don't know how much we've done of that, but I know that we have done some.
so we're very careful with that because there are a lot of laws about robo dialing. So
Mhm.
the only time that we have agents doing outbound is like if someone comes to our website, they fill out a form, we let
Right.
them know in that form, like, hey,
Of
you're
course,
going to
we
get
have that specific opt-in that makes sure
yep,
that they're ready to hear from us. Of
yep,
course, yeah.
yep. And in
Gotcha.
fact, yeah, it's the one that's on the reply intelligence site where, hey, do you want to hear this thing in action? Fill out this form. And so that's the outbound one that we're going, and people love it. But again, people love it because that's what they're signing up for.
Mhm.
I think inversely, you have a risk if you have a database of customers that were working with Brandon, right? If Brandon was your custom guitar guy, and all of a sudden Solano Speed Shop swaps out Brandon with an agent, and now some AI thing is calling. That's a totally different thing, right? But I
Yeah.
think from agentically, if you were like Solana Speed Shop, get 24/7, have a call with one of our AI, with an AI. People who want to do that, they love it. They're going to nerd on it, but it's not going to be every one of your customers. So for the outbound emailing, very, very, again, very, very niche on who we're outbounding. And the only ones that we're outbounding are folks who have come in on a form because they want to hear that thing in action,
Mhm.
right? Um, the the email though, right? Like email is a bit less invasive. So we can have it do an outreach and just say, hey, just checking in, like we're doing this new series where we're teaching you all this new marketing cloud stuff. We can go in and we can do a workshop with your team about about email deliverability. And we've got some folks reach out and schedule some time through that. But then, for every 3 or 4 folks that say that, you've got 20 folks that say I'm good. You know what I mean? Like you got a certain amount of folks that say, oh, we're not using it anymore. But to have an agent go through and do that stuff for us,
Mhm.
one, we're not taxing human capital, right? It's not something that you or I have to say, all right, I need to block off 3 hours today to go dig into Salesforce and find all the, accounts from 4 years ago and check in with them and see how they're doing. Right. That's something that I can trust an agent to do on my behalf for me. Just saying, hey, Ken, just checking in, seeing how things are going. Like, there's a lot of new things. Love to chat with you. Right. And then when people book that time with me, that's when Brandon gets involved. That's it, self qualified.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think starting out with very specific use cases that you can trust what the performance is going to do, and then giving it some very simple tasks that it can do on your behalf too. And we've had this philosophy that if it's someone who is on an email list of ours, they haven't done anything in years, maybe we implemented Salesforce or Pardot or something for them like 5 years ago. There hasn't really been much of a dialogue there anyways. If an agent goes through and marks that person opted out, my heart's not broken over that, right?
Right.
The downstream of it, there's a huge upside because now we have something that is agentically helping us with some data cleanliness, right? I wouldn't necessarily have that agent start going and creating opportunities for us yet and committing revenue to things yet and billing customers yet or sending out
Mhm.
invoices yet or anything like that. Someday, possibly. Um, but yeah, and I think what we're also seeing, Ken, is even just with these use cases that we're describing right now, we are way, way, way farther ahead than a lot of customers we work with on becoming an agentic enterprise. I mean, we're small and nimble and we trust each other and we know what we've got, so we can do that. But to be a really large enterprise, there's a ton of other layers of complexity, of multiple teams, of multiple product lines and SKUs and everything that just make accomplishing what we've accomplished at Cypress over the last few years way more difficult, right? We've been here for a long time. We're not really turning over that much. There's a lot of legacy information we have, so we can train an agent on a bunch of stuff. And I will say, for folks who are listening, corporations that are laying off folks because they're too senior, biggest mistake, and it is going to bite. It's already biting a lot of people in the tail end, but that legacy information, those resources that have been there for a long time, and you see this practice of, oh, we're paying Ken too much. He's too senior. We got, and you know what tasks does Ken do? We can replace that with the junior resource. Huge blocker for getting agentic because Brandon's been here for 3 weeks. I've got a bunch of notes and stuff like that. I'm going to feed it into some AI to learn, but you know what?
What did they
I
used to
don't
call
really
that?
know.
What was the buzzword a few years ago? That was the tribal knowledge and stuff, and
Tribal knowledge, yeah.
yeah.
Brandon, the new guy coming in who's learned all the AI stuff, smart guy, right? He goes in and starts wiping out a bunch of stuff. Um, and we're going to replace, we're going to feed it all into AI and we're going to trust it. Well, when there's an issue there and the team or the individual or the person who built the thing 25 years ago or 40 years ago or whatever, all of the preliminary information to get to that point, they're gone. Guess what? Now you're doing a really big reset, and that's really painful. And we're seeing it. We're seeing large enterprise brands who are really big on this lose customers in mass because there's no more customer service. There's some agent chatbot thing, and that agent chatbot thing is just sending me to the help article that I already read, right? Or telling me something from a help article that I already know, but I don't need that. I need the guy that understands that when I set this thing up in 2015, I set it up with this version of that thing and I customize it in this kind of a way. That person saw it before and said, oh, yeah, I saw this before 8 years ago when I did this for this financial services company, and this is what's breaking right here. It's this little trigger here. It's this all that here. When those things are gone and brands feel empty, brands feel like you reaching out to that brand and, oh, sorry, it's an error. We can't help you. Good luck. Folks are leaving that. Folks are leaving that. To tie it back to technology, folks are leaving that and saying, if we have to reset, this is where your Claudes and your Chat GPTs are winning right now. I'm going to just rebuild this whole thing with an agent and Claude and GPT because I'm going to build it from scratch with my knowledge now, and everything that's in there is going to be something I know about. So now, guess what? If you are a large CRM company that wants to keep these tenured customers for a very long time, but you don't have anyone in there that can service them sufficiently, you just made a huge agentic risk. You just made a huge, your whole agentic enterprise is going to be the enterprise trying to just keep people from leaving versus attracting people in. And on the marketing side, what's the number one thing you're looking to do? It needs to be inbound. You're looking to attract people in. You're looking to keep your customers and have your customers love you so more customers come in. That's where the Ohana thing was so huge. When you look at the heyday of Salesforce, right, where we were, where we had more implementations than we knew what to do with, right? Because so many people, I want to build my business, I want to build it on Salesforce. It was Ohana. It was community. It was, it was Trailhead. It was all these resources to help you understand this thing and build this thing out. And if you needed support, you can get it. If you needed help, you can get it. Those type of enterprises are gonna win still, right? So I think the secret sauce is if you can tie that in with an agentic backend, so your senior person can have an agent help them do, the closed lost opportunities from 5 years ago stuff. So now, senior Brandon, I've got those 3 hours a day to really help customers.
Gosh, or even other members of your team if they need help, right?
Other members from your team, help that junior person learn those things,
Well, that's what it's about. I mean, doesn't that make sense? Golly, that you would, instead of getting rid of that senior resource, free up that senior resource's time to help your junior resources get better at their game. Why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you use the experience?
And I think what I'm seeing more and more with this agentic enterprise is, and I think this is a positive push, is it is pushing everyone into the organization to be customer facing. And for me and for us at Cypress, that's something that's been big, like across the board from the beginning. We've never had back end only folks, right? And if folks have come to us looking for a job, looking for work, and saying, I'm only a developer, I only live in the back end, my response to that has always been, well, I'm a developer too, but I also work with customers. So I don't need to hire someone to be locked in the basement building out a bunch of stuff. We need folks that are out creating great experiences with our customers so they come back for more, so they tell other people about us. That's been the core of Cypress's DNA since the very beginning. So as Cypress building towards an agentic enterprise, we have that at the core. So now we can have agentic stuff do things behind the scenes. And for that, I love agentic. I love behind the scenes, data cleanup, like old stuff, clean it up, missing records, fill that in, those kinds of things. Give me summaries on stuff.
Yeah, that agent that can take action on your automation. Like if your automation is set up to alert you when XYZ happens, and XYZ can be taken care of by the agent. Like, well, let's talk about data for a second, right? We see a lot of folks with data overages, right? They're out of file storage space, or they're creeping up on their data storage space just because they have a lot of things going on under the hood. Happens, right? And a lot of these internal processes can create additional data, additional logs, and things like that. A lot of that does not have to be kept in perpetuity. There is some things that do need to be kept in perpetuity, and we're working on a way to move that stuff offsite pretty quickly for our clients as well. But just managing it internally, we have several clients that just come to us like once a year when they run up against their limit to clean out old logs and stuff, and it's a pretty straightforward process. It would be cool if I could have my automation tell me when I'm close to my limit, and then just have the flow trigger that agent to start that cleanup for me, evaluate where those things are, understand, that's a multi-piece process to really get it, and take all the steps to actually do it, and provide me with, and I think this is the most important part, all the safety mechanisms that I would expect if I was going to do that kind of an operation on my own, right? Like a log, something that tells me some kind of a backup, so I have it somewhere, plus that archive that tells me just in a simple CSV what was deleted and when, so I know. So if I have to do some kind of crazy restore operation, which does happen, I'm in the middle of one right now, for some stuff for notes. But it's interesting. If you're not doing those pieces of it, then boy, what if that client comes back to you later on and says, "Oh no, I made a mistake. I really do need that one
Right.
PDF that I had you delete, a whole bunch of."
Right.
Cool. Let me show you what that
You
is.
have an analysis agent, right? You have a data file storage analysis agent,
Yeah,
and that's job is
and
to
especially when it knows
I,
what to
I,
look for, right? When you're
I've got
telling it.
this alert.
Yep.
I've got this alert. I'm going to go in and I'm going to generate all these reports and logs off of that report, right? So now, agent A, the first step in your supply chain, your first step in your assembly line is, all right, I'm going to run all this analysis. I'm going to provide all this documentation. Now you, as the engineer behind this, you say, okay, this alert happened. It activated agent A. Agent A just does the analysis on it, right? Human in the loop would say, agent A says, hey, Ken, we've identified this many files for this many steps. They passed the check because it was created over a certain amount of time ago, like whatever those other conditions would be, right? And then you could have a button that says, "Hey, should I hand this over to record cleanup agent?" Right? So then agent A does the analysis and hands it over to agent B that's actually able to do the actions, but keeping those jobs really defined so you can control each step of the way. And then if at any given time, you need to make a change, you're making a change to this cog in the machine here, or this cog in the machine over here. There was a
Modular
book.
programming. I mean, it's like we've talked about before with the other things that we've built for clients. And the reason that we do so well with those, because, we get brought in, I think this is a good place to kind of explain this. We get brought in a lot to fix old problems from other older partners or folks who had a half-baked idea and didn't get it done. Whatever reason, it's caused problems in the underlying architecture, and we've had to go in and clean that up. So what we've gotten really good at is that side-by-side architecture or side-by-side engineering. That modular engineering, it lets us build on things really easily. So I think that you want to keep the thought process going the same way with the agents. It makes total sense. I'm going to have this agent do this part of the process, put a human check in there, and then an agent can take on the next part of the process. But those modules are great because they can live independently. And if I want to stop it right here and take care of the rest of it myself, I can.
Right. Or if you need to stop it so you can, again,
fundamental changes to the process, whatever. It gives me a lot of opportunities to tweak and change without having to completely revamp the entire process. So, which goes right back to what you were saying before. When you have to make a wholesale change, it's pretty painful. And I think that if you can continue to think about the way that you're structuring the system like this, like the way that we have, is that, everything is in these bite-sized chunks and can be implemented in this way so it touches the right things. That is the right kind of thinking for getting your agentic enterprise up and running. understand that you can do it modularly and think about the different tasks that need to be completed.
There was a book I read a long time ago. It was over 10 years ago, um, by a guy named Seth Godin. It's called Lynchpin. I think there's more to that. I'll look up it. And it was about this exact same thing, right? And I think this book was written like early 2000s or something like that. And he was talking about like in this modern economy, right? Like following instructions isn't enough, right? You've got to be an artist at what you do. And the whole thing is like, if you're a linchpin, you become like this indispensable resource because you're not just a direction follower. You're not just an instruction follower. You are the artist that has this tapestry of work and in this world, and this is, where you really thrive is this whole business process world, right? Folks love working with Ken because of your business process brain. You're not just going to say, all right, Brandon, well, what do you want to do? Let me follow those orders. What this agentic world is doing is it is pushing that harder, even harder than it was back when I read that book. Probably a book I should read again, actually.
I
But
found it.
yeah, it's a great book. It's like, you're to be indispensable, to be someone who like, you can't just be a cog in a machine, right? So like that work is moving more and more to agents, right? That work is becoming the agent work. As an artist, you are going to say, these are all the steps that need to be done for this beautiful work to occur. You're going to build agents to plug that stuff in, right? Because it's going to be things that need to happen 24/7. It's going to be things that, maybe there's the value is there, but there's not like a dollar amount. I think that's for us and for me, that is so big, right? It's like, gosh, I know that there's all these things that need to be done, but to be a lean operating enterprise in 2026, you can't, you can't go out and hire a person for, a six-figure salary to like click a button or make sure a button goes to the right place every time, right? And in the 90s and early 2000s, there were whole jobs built around that, right? If you can be really good at making this one button work in one page of Microsoft Office, you could have a career for a very long time. And those are types of things that we're seeing agentically start taking over. But I think, yeah, like in building an agentic enterprise, if you want to protect your career by becoming this linchpin in building your agentic enterprise, is understanding how all these pieces fit together. And once you're able to architect all these different pieces, designing these individual small pieces. So you have, in the case of data storage, you have your flow, right? First layer flow is going to detect, oh, you know what? I ran this scan today. We're getting high on storage,
Mhm.
right? So we're going to have to be prepared for this in advance. So that is going to talk to an agent that's going to be available at any given time, right? It's a huge cost saving because this entity is ready to go with the right permissions and the right training, and boom, it can be activated when it needs to be activated, shut down when it needs to be shut down. First agent is going to run an analysis. Okay, Ken, I went through a million task records, and from those millions of task records, I returned all of these files. I've identified these files are this kind of a task. These files are this kind of a task. These files are this kind of a task. We know from a CRM perspective, we want to preserve our phone calls. So these many are phone calls. We probably don't want to touch those first and foremost. But these are ones that happen to be emails that went out that had really large attachments in them, right? So do these old emails that went out with these big file attachments, can we like just create a reference from that file attachment and then delete the files, right? Delete these big, PDFs that sit in there. So the agent A just runs the analysis on that and then hands it over to, maybe it's another automation, maybe it's another tool, maybe it's an Apex class, maybe it's another agent that's going to regulate that Apex class. But as the linchpin in this process, as indispensable, indisposable linchpin, laborer, human in the loop, artist, you are designing these steps and connecting these dots. And then the folks that get really, really good at that, those are going to be the folks that are employable moving forward as all this stuff gets better.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. That's looks like a neat book too. By the way, I was just checking out the cover, and while you're talking about it in the first few pages and everything and all that, and it looks really good. I'm actually kind of intrigued by it. And I'll tell you what we'll do is for the video, we'll make sure that there's a link in there if anybody wants to check it out. I found it available in a few places. So if you do not want to give your money to the Bezos, there's a few other places you can check it out other than the Amazons or whatever they're called. I forget the
Yeah,
name.
and I'm sure, I'm sure, like, even if you have a local, I love supporting our local bookstores
Local
too, right?
bookstores are great, and from what I've seen, this thing is available pretty much used everywhere. I already found a couple local bookstores, so absolutely. But yeah, check it out. It sounds like a good one. But yeah, this is. I think that this. It's interesting how the agentic stuff, the data stuff, the readiness, and everything. I think it really goes how it goes back to how you keep your house in order in the first place. Because if you can get into the good habits of taking care of the underlying architecture, the underlying structure of your business and your data on whichever cloud platform you have adopted, um, you're going to be in a much better position to keep your business and business processes moving forward, and avoid having to do one of those wholesale changes because you've let things get too dirty. So I would say, if something was to kind of come out of this whole conversation, I didn't know exactly where it was going to go today, but I knew I wanted to really chat about the agentic stuff particularly. Is that again, the be aware of what's going on with your system, and is your data not only ready to support agents and AI. How is it supporting your humans? How's it supporting your team right now? And if it's not, if the processes aren't there, if the data isn't there, if your team's incentives to get the data into the system aren't there, that's probably where you should start this, and that'll let you have the success with the other pieces that you're looking for, I think.
Yeah, yeah, great point.
And who knows, man? We may have to get back in the business of doing the live boot camps, because I think that this area is one of those places that it would still be fun to get in a room full of folks who have those really good and interesting questions and the interesting use cases. I always got a lot out of it as a teacher, because I really enjoyed when folks, well, what about this thing over here? This is still really confusing me, and you get to solve that problem. It's rewarding, right? It's a lot of fun. I mean, that's the reason that I have worked so hard towards being more of a consultant and understanding all of that, because my brain immediately wants to go to, well, that's an interesting question. Let's see how we can,
Let's dig
make
into
this, your next $1,000,000 for you or whatever, right?
Yeah,
It's a lot of fun to be able to do that for folks. So
yeah. Those Q&As were everything, weren't they? Those Q&As were like,
all the two-way communication. It was so funny when we were approached by other boot camp providers who wanted to, have us essentially produce their product, and their product was always a one-way street, meaning their person, not even necessarily uh, an expert on the subject, was going to walk you through this experience, and you didn't have an opportunity to ask questions. And if you did, you were just referred back to your material or to an online resource. You weren't going to get the answer to your question in the boot camp. And that never made sense to me. And what was surprising, Brandon, is when we were doing it, how many other companies were doing it that way. That it
right.
was we're going to dictate some information to you. And if you have questions, we'll politely refer you back to the workbook.
Right.
We're like, shit, we got a whole nerd network on standby right now on Slack. And if we can't get the question answered for you right now, we're going to get an email to you this afternoon with it.
We're going to figure it out. Yeah. Well, I think, the LMSs, for how great they are, a lot of them did push to that kind of a learning style.
Mhm.
And I think for the detriment of education to a bit. I think a lot of the training that we see still to this day is LMS based. Again, there's something really enticing about that as a business, as an enterprise. It's scalable. We subcontract right now with a lot of other Salesforce partners, like larger, bigger teams and things like that. And one of the things that always comes back to me is when we're working with these teams, all of the no befores that we have to do, or these. It's funny because I've done so many of these. It's like this know before training where you're getting trained on what an email phishing attempt is and this and that. And one, as an email marketer, I know emails inside and out. I can tell a fake email from a mile away, right? So to go through these trainings every couple of months, but they're all the same thing, right? It's watch a video, answer a quiz, watch a video, answer a quiz, watch a video, answer a quiz. And it covers a defined scope of stuff. And look, it gets the point across, right? It drives home the concept that you want to learn. Just
But
like,
are they training videos or are
well,
they compliance videos? You know what I mean?
well,
We're required to
it's
train you for X number of hours per year,
yeah,
and to remain
it's both.
compliant, do this thing on the computer.
It's totally both. And like, because Coursera has a lot of great content on there as
Hmm.
well. I know a lot of folks make awesome Coursera content. We've been contracted to create those kinds of
Yep.
videos. They are cool, and you do help. You do help learn.
But it's very
I don't.
different, right? It's
It's
very
very
much
different.
different than being in an instructee environment where they get an opportunity to listen here, absorb, and then let me ask that question.
And absorb
That's
with
the biggest
someone
thing.
who is and absorb with someone who is in the tool answering problems. And that's another thing that really um, sets us apart from what I've seen is we're working with customers all the time. Both you and I are still very much um, like hands-on
All
keyboard
day, every
folks.
day, yes, sir.
Um,
Can't help
a
it
lot,
mostly.
yeah, I think we're wired that way, right? I love the hands-on keyboard type work because I've always felt like I am best when I really understand something inside and out. I'm not the best. Okay, I'm going to read something and then I'm going to like understand all these variants of it, right? I need to go in there. I need to click a button. I need to see what causes the error. That's just how I am. So that way, when I am in an instructor situation, I'm speaking from a space of I've been there before,
I
and
already
I've never
broke that.
been really good. I've never really been good at hiding that. And I think there are good teachers out there, good trained, certified instructors that are great at delivering training information. They're
Yep.
great at taking a learning plan, great at taking information
Hmm.
and teaching folks on that. Um, but yeah, I think everything that we've done that has been wildly successful has really been around not so much we're going to teach you off of this learning plan and it's going to be organized and we're going to present information in this very pristine, clean way. I think it's actually been quite the opposite in a way. It's like, oh, someone answered a question and you know what? Sorry, we're going to take an extra 10 minutes to dig into this thing. And that's why a lot of what we even ended up doing with our boot camps is saying, all right, well, it's better if we take all this extra stuff out or make these things optional if we get there because we learned very quickly if we can spend an extra 10 minutes or 15 minutes like drilling into that topic,
Yep.
everybody benefits more because drilling
Yep.
into that topic ends up touching on all of those things or rehashing those things.
Yeah.
So the takeaway for the participant is, you know what? I really understand how the different relationships in Salesforce work. Whoa, I really understand how formulas work.
Hmm.
Versus, yeah, we went through all of this stuff and we touched on company settings and do all these things and everything was finished on time and it was good and we got through all the material and yep, I just got a brain dump of a bunch of stuff and hopefully I retain 50% of it. If I retain 50% of it, I'm going to become a certified Pardot consultant or a certified Salesforce admin, right? We moved away from that, and I thought the folks that attended had more value when we geared it towards like we actually want you to know how this thing works.
Yep. Big time, big time. And because we started focusing on telling more of the story. So it wasn't just this goes here, this goes here. It's here's how processes work in Salesforce. Here's how we take your sales process, right? Here's how, like, when you get a new lead, what do you do with it? How is that lead worked? And then what does it mean for that lead to be qualified? And what we show folks is just kind of, rather than just the lead object, well, it's the lead object and how that data came in the system and what's required there, and then thinking about the lead stages and going through that process, but then how that relates to, well, then we convert it and it becomes a contact and an account. And here's your opportunity. How they all work together as a platform and how your process works with them. And then marketing was the front end extension of that. How do we take, so when they do come in through our marketing automation, what does that prospect look like to us? What was that prospect's journey like with us? And now, can we see that prospect's journey over here as a lead? After they've MQL, now they're in this SQL process, and what does it mean to be SQL? And then, but again, oh gosh, we've had that conversation 100 times this week too, right? It seems like a lot of clients that we work with that are coming our way these days um, seem to be fighting between marketing and sales still, and
That's
not
been
having
every
one of the.
conversation I've had this morning, Ken. That's funny you bring it.
Oh, I know.
My 3 workshops this morning have all been exactly that.
Yeah,
And
mine
you know,
too.
yep. And those levers. I think one of the things, just for those who are still with us and watching this, one of those is particularly in our world,
Hmm.
marketing cloud account engagement, formerly Pardot. Exposing that engagement history has been huge. A lot of exercises around like providing clarity around lead scoring and grading,
Hmm.
up to the point of even creating more custom scores. Like one of the solutions that we implemented actually was really cool. The account engagement score is strictly tracking, clicks, opens, form bills, things like that. And even if you have a degradation model around that, where you're saying, okay, if there's no activity for 30 days, like drop it at a certain point,
Hmm.
it's only tracking one thing. And what we were discussing, and I've been discussing this actually with a couple of clients, is having a separate score. We might call it a SQL score or a sales score that takes in the account engagement score as part of a greater score. So that's a formula. We're keying in on other fields, right? Like if they're hooked into Zoom or a webinar platform or some other system, like if it's an LMS and they're taking courses and things like that. So it's these other things that feed into this score to capture things outside of account engagement to give them a true SQL score. And that starts opening up the conversation. I think that's where the whole notion around data cloud comes in, right? You've got all of these engagements and all of these
More
profiles,
channels, right?
more
More of those
channels,
channels.
profiles, and
Hmm.
places where your lead, your prospect's information lives. So if you can have a unified profile that's taking in all of those things, and you could run a calculated insight on that, and you have a calculated insight giving you a really good, meaningful score. Those are the kinds of things that, yeah, businesses, I would say in the conversations I've been having, are more imperative than the agentic stuff. Because once
I
you have
agree.
that conversation, now you can say, all right, this is good. If we can have something agentically going in through like a very specific scenario and doing some cleanup to make that score more meaningful and more accurate and more trusted, then guess what? That friction between MQL and SQL should over time go away, and you have better collaboration, better sales and marketing alignment. In fact, I think Salesforce's in their summer release, um, they're seeing this too. There's agents that are all around sales and marketing alignment. Like account discovery agent is one of them. So they are also working on ways agentically to support these kinds of things. But yeah, I think like it's getting into the very nuanced details of how can we get this data working for us better to then get the systems performing
You know
better.
what I'm doing right now, just for basic folks who don't have any of that and need something, right? It's like the first thing that I advise them to do is, at the very least, if you're working through MQL and then hand over to sales to go through an SQL lead process, at the very least, if we call something MQL, number one, everyone on the team should understand what it means for a prospect to be MQL. What should the Salesforce expect to get? And then after that, if marketing hands me a lead and the quality was not there, meaning, you know what, that wasn't a good lead. How did this end up in my bucket? This is supposed to be MQL, and I have to send this lead back right now, because or it's just going to sit in my lead queue and not get anything because I know he's not qualified. I need a mechanism to be able to tell marketing, hey, looks like this one was a miss, and here's why. Now,
Mhm.
for a lot of my clients, it's a simple field where it's like, as soon as they hit unqualified, there's a required field that says what's the
Drop
unqualified reason. Now, they may truly be unqualified. I'm not going to send that back to marketing. There's no further nurturing required. If he needs nurturing, put him into a nurture stage. But if I need to send him back to marketing with a specific message, then I want a specific category to be able to do that, not MQL, or not consider MQL, and a reason why. And the reason is because if marketing, if my assets, my landing pages, my email messaging, all that stuff, if it's not landing properly and not working well, and worse, if it's not giving me the data I need to say that this person's truly MQL, I need to modify my process as a marketer, right? In the same way that I would expect sales leadership to talk to that salesperson about how we qualify a lead all the way through and what does it mean to be a qualified lead, and should there be a deal on the table when I convert them, whatever. Everybody should know those rules, and if I'm not complying, then there should be some adjustment. So a lot of it is just everybody understanding what does it mean to be market qualifying, right? So what does sales expect to get when I send it over, and do they have a mechanism to kick it back if it wasn't quite right? And it's not meant to be, that there's supposed to be some animosity, or I'm going to find this shitty one and send it back over.
It's
It's a
working.
legitimate thing, so the tools can work better,
Yeah,
so that every lead I get is a good lead.
Yep.
And
And that marketing can take those insights.
Yep.
And that allows marketing to say, okay, this was the bottleneck over here, right? The bottleneck was they came on this form. We asked them this information on this form, but there was this little tidbit of information that was missing.
Mhm.
So sales didn't have what they need to drive that person forward, or the deal was too small, or, whatever those reasons are, right? Because then now marketing doesn't have to get defensive, and no one has to get defensive, right? Because we're all working towards that common goal.
Right.
So we can say, all right,
a
we
closed
get it out
one deal. That's what everybody's
one.
trying to do here. I mean, shit, get past everything else. We're, why do you want to be better at customer service? Why do you want to have a better customer experience? To close the goddamn deal. I mean, it's not that hard, right? So we need to start thinking more, I think, in general. I mean, we see a lot of backlash against biggest corporations right now, and that's part of the reason why. When we talk about the enshittification of America, that's a lot of it. Our experience as customers has gone downhill, and I think in large part because of rush to get this thing out, rush to get that thing out before it's ready for prime time. Well, now we have a lot of aspects of it that are ready for prime time that we can engage here, but the underlying piece still needs to be you have to be a willing business participant and want the tools to work for you and want to invest the time and effort that it takes to get them to work for you. And then you can take that next step, get that next thing, right? But if you're not doing the customer service right, if you're not giving your team, the insight on the tools that they're using, they're going to stall. You're not going to get what you want. So,
Yeah.
Gah. But it's it's good. Things are moving in the right direction, and that's, I think, probably the biggest message that I want to see is that a lot of things really are moving in the right direction if you are paying attention to what the true pitfalls are. Number one with the bullet, good data, have good data.
Yep.
All right. Well, Brandon, we have already eclipsed an hour here, so I think we're just about ready to wrap it up. But unless there was anything else that you wanted to shout out into the ether there, or that we should talk about from the week that we just went through.
No, I think that, just to kind of recap, a lot of this work around sales and marketing alignment is happening right now. Very human work around sales and marketing alignment. And I think what I'm seeing is that is number one before we can have any conversation around agentic stuff and things like that. And yeah, step one of that journey is setting up something so that the data can provide insights to people to give us the good reporting on it. And then once we are confident in the reporting and confident in the data, then we can start taking steps into how we want to handle that agentically. So I continue to be excited, super excited about having these sales and marketing alignment conversations. It is so right up our alley. Helping folks turn on these new Marketing Cloud Next features. It's getting cooler and cooler and cooler all the time. The new releases seem to be more of these like ready to go agents, which is exciting. I think for customers, pumping their brakes definitely correctly so, because they want to get their foundation laid first. But gosh, yeah, if you or your organization has questions about SQL to MQL processes to sales processes on Salesforce, but also on HubSpot, go high level, whatever it may be, and you're taking a look at some of these blockers to get you to agentic, we're in this world every day. We're answering these questions every day, and we have the capability and bandwidth to take on more projects right now. And we've got a great team behind us that have been nerding out on this stuff for the last few years. I'm excited to say that Cypress Learning is an agentic enterprise. We do things agentically wherever we can, and we are seeing some really awesome results. Happy to share them with you, happy to show you how to implement them for you, and be your partner in success moving forward.
Love it, man. Awesome. Well, it's been a great week, and I'm looking forward to the week ahead. A lot more challenges this week, and more of these conversations. I think we definitely need to keep the conversation going about that handshake between sales and marketing, because I mean, like you, Brandon, my goodness, when my conversations seem to be dominated by it, there's obviously some real room for growth there for a lot of organizations. So, all right. Well,
Thank
thanks for
you.
joining me here again. You guys have a great one. We'll see you all next week.
All right, see you.